to welcome all of you to our workshop today on inclusion in EDHE 105 and 305. And we have three very special presenters with us. Kevin Kozart from the Sarah Eisen Center for Women and Gender Studies is with us. Tamara Warhol from the Office of Global Engagement. And Shambhoda Mead from the Center for Inclusion and Cross-Cultural Engagement. So want to welcome them and thank y'all for coming to the workshop. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. Yep. So thank you all for being here. We will talk a little bit more specifically about each of our individual areas and some of the resources that are available as we move throughout the workshop. But thanks for being here. I don't know if it's the topic of diversity and inclusion that drew you or the turkey sandwiches, but whatever it was, we're glad you're here. So we're gonna just jump right in. And of course, throughout, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to ask. But we will plan a time at the very end for discussion and any questions and allow you to share as well any experiences that you've had specifically related to teaching and having conversations with students about topics of diversity and inclusion. So the student learning outcomes that are associated with this particular workshop are explaining the community's shared ethical standards as described in the UM Creed, analyzing significant moments in UM history, practice building healthy relationships with peers, professors, and university staff, and reflecting upon personal strengths and weaknesses. So what we really thought would be helpful and what we want to really focus on sharing is some of the practical tools and resources that you may be able to utilize as you continue as an EDHE instructor throughout the fall and or spring semester. So we will just give you kind of a sense of what we'll do. We'll do some reflection activities, but we will each facilitate an actual activity for you that you and provide you with the guidelines for then taking that back and doing it with your students. And we'll provide some additional resources for you as well. Okay.
So basically what we decided to do is kind of start with the UM Creed as the basis of what we're talking about, especially when it comes to the importance of discussing and teaching issues related to diversity, inclusion, and stuff. So the first question we have for you is, what stands out from the Creed to you in relation to diversity and inclusion?
The very first one, with respect the dignity of each person.
Okay. Anything else?
Civility.
Fairness and civility. So I think both of those kind of go hand in hand when talking about it. So, and that's one of the things I think is one of the biggest challenges, I think when teaching diversity and stuff, is because a lot of times students aren't comfortable talking about some of these topics. And also you can get into areas where groupthink takes over, where one person's kind of saying something and everyone else kind of picks up on it and joins in with it. And then the conversation can kind of get away from you. I know one of the things that I do the very first day of class is lay down kind of the ground rules, and it's also kind of in my syllabus talking about, there'll be topics that you aren't comfortable talking about, but we will treat them, with fairness and civility, and you're free to say whatever, just kind of realize that you have to respect the dignity of other people in the class and stuff. So, and, part of the fairness and civility is allowing people to talk and talk out. Because a lot of times you need to know where students are coming from before you can kind of get them to where you need them to be on these topics. So, you need to be fair in letting them tell you what they actually think, so that you can then help them. I don't want to use the term evolve, but evolve as a student. So, what about your own strengths and weaknesses when teaching kind of diversity and stuff? People have really good experiences or maybe not so good experiences in teaching it. How many of you teach the diversity chapters? Okay. How many of you call on other people to teach them for you? So, for those that do teach, kind of how do you address it normally?
I
used some of the resources that were put online before with the activities of different instances of who would you want to be and who would you not want to be. That's really worked out well and has had really good discussion.
Were you gonna say something? Okay. For those of you who don't teach it, why not? Or isn't there something didn't raise it?
I actually teach it, but I always ask someone for advice first. And so I only taught it because Dr. Silver made me. But the reason that I feel like I need to ask for advice is because I didn't want to be the black teacher talking about diversity. You know,
Yeah.
and it's so easy to, shut down a person who you feel maybe hypersensitive to a comment or a way of thinking. I just wanted to be able to. I felt I lacked the authority to be able to challenge a student in a way where they wouldn't just blow it off as me being hypersensitive to something.
And that's such an important point in terms of the hypersensitivity. I think oftentimes we have to all, and that's why this conversation I think is important. We have to check our own privileges and our own biases and recognize that just because of how you look, that automatically creates some assumptions from your students. And so you have to go into the room thinking that. And so it is good to utilize resources that are available, whether online or other colleagues. And it's okay to bring someone in, but we want to, again, kind of today give you some of those on your own tools, because students will, once you've built those relationships, they will, hear you, they will listen, and I think they'll even respect your position as it relates to some of these conversations. I always say, as long as you're coming from a good place, right? So if you're coming from a good place, you have good intentions, do no harm, then I think any of us, you don't have to be a person of color to teach diversity. Right? You don't have to be LGBT to talk about sexuality and LGBTQ related issues. And so I think it is important for all of us as instructors to really recognize that kind of as step one, and then taking advantage of some of the resources that are available to move forward in those discussions.
I was gonna follow up on his right quick. I don't have the exact study in my head, but there's a study in the last couple of years done, and LGBTQ educators are often the least likely to challenge anti-gay statements in classes and stuff, because they kind of don't want to be seen as the gay teacher who's all the time, kind of confronting it or something, which is actually an interesting.
Right.
And I think that's kind of the same with people who have underrepresented statuses. They often are less likely to challenge things that against their own status. So.
I was just going to say, I've had Jen Stallman come teach this because I really don't know how to handle. I don't have confidence in handling controversy and differences of opinion. So I'm trying to grow. That's why I'm here. And I think that's a lot of. I would think a lot of people are just kind of, don't want to open some cans of worms within your class and how to handle that.
Certainly.
So,
Thank you.
I've had 2 semesters now where the entire class is all white. So the first semester and the third semester I actually taught it. So it was difficult having a discussion with primarily all white students, with me being the white teacher. The other years where we've had diversity in the class has been better, but those 2 have been probably the 2 hardest ones to do. So I guess, what advice or resources would you have for someone who is teaching the same thing over?
Well, I mean, I would say, and I'll get more back to it later, like I teach in the diversity chapter, but like when I did it last year, I had Henry Paris come and talk in Parish Yates Chapel to, in some ways, get away from kind of the black-white issue that diversity is often formed as here, and start talking about different types of diversity at the university, you know. So, and let him tell his story of, you know, being a Jewish man here in the 50s and having problems finding a place to get married, you know, and inviting some others. One option, and I know Benita and I, we're kind of side by side, is, you know, maybe find another section that's at the same time and almost combine sections and have a greater debate on it. Burns Belfry is a great resource. It's free to go. So I've taken my classes both years to Burns Belfry and let them kind of see it, you know, instead of teaching it. So.
And I would definitely agree with that, and, you know, not assuming, you know, making assumptions, even if everybody presents as white, you know, still recognizing that other forms of diversity exist. And while race is an important part of the conversation, it's not the only part of the conversation. And so when we talk about diversity, we do have to look at, we got religious, socioeconomic background, geographic, you know. I would, I don't want to say, like, I would always shy away from watering it down to, oh, I like purple and I like green, you know, those sorts of things. But certainly looking at other more deeper levels of diversity that do exist within any community, even within the white community, there's still diversity that's going to be found among those students. And so the conversation can also be about creating inclusion. And so how can we all work together to create a campus environment that's welcoming and affirming to all members of the community. So that's also the other part of the conversation while we talk about differences and, you know, what types of diversity exists. But okay, we have all this diversity, now what? What does that mean to be a person of color, a person who may be of a Muslim student or some other religion that's not in the majority? So we all have to work together to certainly create that more affirming or welcoming environment. So I think that's where your conversation can also apply. Question. And then we'll move forward after this question.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment. It sounds like a great opportunity to talk about white privilege.
Right.
You know, a lot of our white students arrive on our campus really having no idea about what white privilege really is and the power of it and the effects that it has on the community and their interactions with other students. So that's a great opportunity, fertile ground to approach that subject.
So that suggestion was to talk about white privilege as well. And so that is, I think that's an excellent suggestion. What better of an opportunity to do so?
If I can add one more thing, I artificially create pairs for my class. So before the class ever starts, I look at my role and I artificially pair up people to work together during the semester. And I try to make sure that they're in different academic areas. I try to make sure that they are, you know, usually male with a female or someone from Mississippi who's not from Mississippi. So it's giving, and they have to interview each other early in the semester. They have to do projects together. So it lets them learn about someone who's different than they are, and they kind of, and difference is not always skin color. So.
Okay. So just to move on, this is, I'm not sure if any of you have seen this, but the university recently worked to develop some core messaging. There was a core messaging task force that was established. And so this is the university's core message as it relates to diversity and inclusion. And I share these because this, I think, is a great list to start in terms of creating learning outcomes, or as you're developing any other activities or your discussions and dialogues. Then, you know, as a member of the community, we want all students, faculty, and staff to be able to demonstrate that respect and dignity of each person, which connects again back to the creed, an understanding of their own and others' identity, culture, and heritage, and the ability to engage in respectful and cooperative dialogues around issues of diversity and multiculturalism. And that goes back to the civility piece. And so it all really connects back. So, oops. And so as you, I think I'll just, okay. So as you have those conversations, as you develop your syllabus and decide how you want to approach these chapters, then this core message I think can be translated into learning outcomes or activities as well. And we will provide this PowerPoint to you all via email following, and we do have some handouts that we're gonna pass out here shortly as well. So now we're going to transition into talking a little bit more about what each of our individual offices can offer in terms of resources, and then lead you through a brief activity. We may not do the entire thing. We're going to do kind of abbreviated versions just to fit them all in, but we will be providing you all with the templates for going forward and presenting those yourself. So up first is Dr. Warhol.
Hi, my name is Tamara Warhol. I'm the director of the Intensive English Program, and I'm a professor in modern languages. I teach linguistics and teaching English to teaching teachers, which is teach English to second language learners. The Office of Global Engagement is comprised of 4 offices: so the Intensive English Program, Study Abroad. So if your students are interested in going abroad, we would be who you contact. If you have international students, we're also the Office of International Programs, which has visa issues, health insurance issues, so you can refer them and they can refer out as well. And we finally are the United States-Japan Partnership Program, which has less to do with your students, and it's an outreach program in which we work with Japanese community members to provide elementary school education to their children in Japanese. So I'm actually going to start with my activity and then wrap back around to what we do specifically in our offices. And as I talk, I try to do some sort of meta-discursive or language about language of how I teach. So handing this out, so some of the things, if you think about teaching diversity, but specifically within global engagement part of things, is you can break it down into 3 different ways. One of them is challenging ideologies or hidden beliefs. So those are some of the things we just talked about. 2 is communicating and how people communicate differently across cultures. For example, I communicate very differently than my colleagues who are from the South. So if you didn't notice, I'm not. Finally, participation. So how do we participate as global citizens? So on the reverse side, I have a global citizenship video project that I make my students do regardless of the class I'm teaching. So if your students would like to do it, I would appreciate that because I'm gathering videos. But I want to start with this one. If you could quickly read through the questions. If you have a pencil, you can fill it out. If not, just think about them in your mind. For number 5, just think about it because I don't think we're going to have time to turn to a partner. So normally I would give my students 5 to 10 minutes to do this. You get 1 to 2. Okay, so I have a circle for the first one. What would you look like in your driver's license? Just describe it to me. Or you just look like a supermodel?
No smiles.
No smiles? No smiles. So no one smiles in the
I smile.
So half people
They
smile.
tell me no.
What would they say?
Smiling when you get pulled over.
I've only ever been told to look at the camera.
Look at the
Look
camera.
here. One.
I have my eyes closed.
Anyone else? Okay, so when I